I'm making this video to give some more background on possible reasons for the casting of Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor. Of course, I'll be giving my usual disclaimers at the beginning of this video, but many people will just ignore them and continue to post ignorant comments. I want to make clear that I'm always willing to debate the other side of the argument. With that said, however, the sheer amount of morons and dumbasses I've dealt with in recent weeks has been staggering. Conversely, however, there are still a lot of decent people with views that don't entirely agree with mine. I've actually enjoyed debating back and forth, and I'm grateful for those that have been respectful. I'm going to mellow my stance somewhat from the video I posted last week. As you can tell, I was somewhat pissed off and getting sick of dealing with the same idiotic comments over and over again. I know the wording of the video made it appear that I would not entertain any opposing opinions, and that was not my intention, although it may have appeared that way. As long as you are respectful, I will do my best to answer your comment. My views on third-wave feminism, however, are unlikely to change. The same could be said for modern social justice. These are my views, but I respect that you also have a right to your own opinion. As for the idiots, some I blocked and some I've had their comments deleted, and frankly others I've just messed with. I have, however, left some of the more amusing comments up on this channel. If nothing else, at least they're amusing. Going forward, I will try to treat you with the same respect you treat me. If you're going to resort to personal insults, you can get lost. Again, here's my view on the 13th Doctor, which you've all heard before. My issue is not with the gender, even though people keep saying that. My concern is that this casting was not done for the right reasons. We've seen extreme ideologies creep into Doctor Who, particularly during the past two series. Now let's be clear, Doctor Who has always been a program that reflected the period in which it aired. But there is something very different about the show now. We are not watching Robert Holmes write a satire on the British taxation system, or dealing with legitimate women's rights, which the character of Sarah Jane Smith represented. We are essentially dealing with a hate movement. I will, however, also admit that we are dealing with a lot of unknowns. For all we know, Whittaker could turn out to be brilliant, and the feminist and social justice agenda could be pushed to the side. Only time will tell, but I think we have reason to be skeptical. My main focus in this video is to introduce the BBC policy that may have led to this decision. Keep in mind that this is only the second in a series of videos that will examine this issue from a multitude of perspectives. If you're wondering why I covered one thing and not something else, chances are that it will be covered later in the series. Have patience. Also, I do take note of legitimate comments from both sides in formulating my conclusions for future videos. And I mean legitimate comments. If you're looking to be an ass, then I think you know what you can go do with yourself. This video is only looking at one possible motivation in the casting choice, and it is only intended to be brief. As I've done in other videos, I think it's important to, once again, identify the difference between equal opportunity and equity. Equal opportunity means that everyone is given an equal chance, regardless of gender, race, or sexual orientation. Equity means allocating resources to one group arbitrarily while actively discriminating or removing it from another group. Affirmative action and employment equity schemes are a form of overt discrimination. This means that there is no way of knowing whether or not the best person for a job or role actually ended up getting that position. Take this example. An organization has two positions to fill, and its equity policy states that at least one of these positions must be female. 100 males apply, and only 2 women apply. The men have a 1 in 100 chance, the women have a 1 in 2 chance. Can anyone argue this is fair? In 2016, the BBC launched its diversity and inclusion strategy, which set strict guidelines in all areas both on-screen and off-screen. Essentially, things are now being assigned by category. 50% of the entire corporation is to be female by 2020. Now, of course, nobody is saying that women are not capable of these roles. To do so would be highly bigoted. But then, let's look at the one group that is left out of the strategy, namely white, heterosexual males, which many people treat like a swear word these days. Let's assume that you're a young man wanting to break into television. What are you to do? You now have open discrimination working against you. We hear a lot about privilege, but I dare say that if you were to ask any white male outside of, say, maybe the top 1 to 10%, I'm pretty sure that the answer would be, what privilege? Where is this privilege of which you speak? If you're in the bottom 50%, it's even worse. There are no scholarships, discriminatory hiring practices, and the constant humdrum of being told you are the scum of the earth. On top of this, you now have entertainment mediums that are also telling you that you're scum. Now, Doctor Who has always been progressive, but in the last few years, it's become increasingly hostile to the world's most hated demographic, which many of its fans represent. Now again, let me be clear. I don't endorse discrimination of any kind, regardless of what group it is against. Unfortunately, the BBC have decided to double down on this. This is also a symptom of being a crown corporation. Unlike private networks, they have taxpayers to help fund them, or in the case of the BBC, they have the licensing fee. Now I'll provide an example of the new Star Trek series to contrast. I'm sure we all remember the response to the trailer, and many feared that it was going to turn into SJW Trek. I have a feeling that much of the show was rejigged after this. Yes, there is still some SJW content there, Klingons, but the main problem with the show is that it actually seems to be quite depressing and doesn't necessarily reflect Gene Roddenberry's vision. But my point is that changes were definitely made because Star Trek is a private enterprise, no pun intended. The creators and CBS obviously looked at what happened with Ghostbusters 2016, then looked at the response to their own trailer, and then decided that they didn't want to go down the same road to failure. Off topic, I think the show did get better after episode 3, but still has some issues. I'm working on another video on the subject, but I want to give it one more episode. Now back to Doctor Who. Because it has the safety net of the licensing fee, it is not subject to the same risks as a franchise like Star Trek or Ghostbusters. It has been renewed for 5 years, reportedly, and it could go on for 5 years or more, even with a diminishing fan base. It's impossible to gain an exact figure, but it seems clear that a substantial portion of the audience is not happy at the moment. Personally, although statistically I know this isn't much to go on, almost everyone I know personally, both male and female, who were fans of Doctor Who are now done with it. I may be the only one that is even willing to watch Series 11, and it actually seems to be the female fans that are the most upset. They see this kind of message as pandering, as if it somehow portrays them as weak. Contrary to what the media tells you, most women are not feminists. Also, what kind of message does this send to the show's younger fans? It has been publicly announced that Chibnall only wanted a female doctor, and taken in hand with the diversity strategy, one could argue that Whittaker was an equity hire. This sends a bad message to both young boys and young girls. For the young boys, equity policies tell them that even if they are the best, they could still get turned down depending on what equity policy a company has in place. Ironically, this is very similar to what women struggled against during the first and second wave of feminism. For young girls, it could give them the impression that, no, you don't have to work for something, it will be handed to you because of a quota system. How about everybody gets considered and the best person gets the job? What's so wrong with that? I know people will try and twist these words around in the comments, but I'm just arguing common sense. I actually feel bad for Whittaker. She didn't ask for this and probably had no idea it was coming. I've covered the handling of the situation from a public relations perspective in another video. All it would have taken was a little common sense from the production team. In publicly announcing that this was an equity hire, Chibnall basically threw gasoline on a fire. For many of us, we just want our show back, whether the doctor be male or female. It's almost absurd to comprehend how this show has ended up in this situation. Reading my comments section is both enlightening and disheartening at the same time. This channel is a decade old, and Doctor Who has always been a central piece of it. I do this for fun, and I never would have guessed only a few years ago that I would go from celebrating the show to this. My channel has actually broken its all-time daily views record 5 times in the past week, and this is all because of how explosive this situation has become. With all that said, I look forward to a day when I can make positive videos about Doctor Who again. Let's hope the show can get past this division. Unfortunately, both Chris Chibnall and Stephen Moffat and many Doctor Who fans are only making things worse. And that's it for this video. So as always everyone, thank you for watching and have a good day.